I'm OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors, and you're listening to the Double Clutch Podcast.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Double Clutch Podcast. I'm Mike Miller and I'm joined as usual by Matt Wellington.
Hello, this is weird. I'm on the other side of the seat.
Look, I said it'd be weird and you said how come, and then you said it won't be weird, and the first thing you lead with is this'll be weird. Brilliant. Set the tone. Amazing. And of course the man, the myth, the legend that is Joe Hulbert.
Hi there guys. Late one, isn't it?
It is a late one, but
Our very own Zach Lowe.
Our very own Zach Lowe. As many of you are aware, the trade deadline just passed about 2 hours ago now, so we thought we'd jump on and just recap what has been a pretty chaotic and fun few days. If you haven't already, and if you haven't, you missed out. Over on the doubleclutch.uk website has been our trade tracker, which has covered absolutely everything that's gone on. It's basically aggregated Woj, Lowe, Shams, you name them, we got it. It's there. Read through it. It is insane. You cannot even possibly fathom some of the stuff that's gone on. It's just there's so much. It's easy to forget. So we're just going to come back with some of the big ones that have happened in the last few hours. So let's jump straight in with Marc Gasol of the now Toronto Raptors. Guys, what were your takes on this trade? It's kind of blew me away that Masai Ujiri pulled this one off.
Yeah, it's not a good return for Memphis. I mean, I like JV as a central piece for your... Is he their best ever franchise player? I mean, it's probably between him and... I don't know, I guess his brother was pretty good, but he's probably the most important ever player, and they got JV. Yeah, solid offensive centre. Not that they'll be in the playoffs, but he's one of those bigs you can't play in the postseason because he's pretty much... You can't do a lot of him on defence. DeLon Wright, I think he's a good playmaker, but pretty much every Raptors fan I've spoken to has always said we need to trade him for some shooting. So, yeah, from Chris Wallace's point of view, he's been there for quite a long time. This isn't really... It's not really a great return. Obviously, we'll get to another move they made, I'm sure, at some point. And CJ Miles, for me, is basically Garrett Temple. Probably definitely a worse version of Garrett Temple. So, yeah, this is not a good return for them at all.
Yeah, you've to move your 34-year-old centre is one thing, but like the return to get back was not great. CJ Miles not having a great season at all. You grab a second-round pick. Dylan Wright I like Dylan Wright. He's an okay player, but he's been one of the significant factors in the Raptors' poor shooting overall this season. And then Jonas Valanciunas, we said on the last show, like he has improved, but he has played limited minutes. Going into the situation he's in Memphis now, be interested to see how he fits in there. But it's officially the end of the sort of grit and grind era, really, because they were the last two sort of sole remaining teammates from that momentous period where they were in the playoffs and doing the infamous grit and grind. There's no OJ Mayo anymore. There's no Tony Allen. There's just Mike Conley left there, and he was quite adamant that he didn't want to get moved. There was rumours that he would, right up until 8:00, that they were still considering sending him over to Utah, which I think most of us here thought would be a pretty good deal. But in terms of that going through, that never went through, and he's still there. So yeah, they're in a sticky situation, but I think it's a great deal for the Toronto Raptors. I really do. I think they've come away laughing here.
On Memphis there, I want to run this by both of you guys. You said the grit and grind era is over there. Yeah, absolutely right. Do you think that's a good thing? Because they've been playing that grit and grind basketball this year, and they have been, as I wrote in my article, which I plug every time I speak, I think they've been dreadful, but they've been trying to play that other style as well. Do you think that maybe, I don't know if we'll see it with Bigstaff's head coach, Mike, but do you think they need to maybe modernise a little bit more? You've got a very polished offensive centre. He's not going to defend anyone, but you've got Jaren Jackson, who I think can play a bit of centre as well. Do you think this could be a good thing moving forward if they've got maybe a more modern roster? Because I still think they were clinging to the past this year.
Yeah, absolutely, because the cornerstone of this franchise has been Gasol, and that entire grit and grind process was geared around him and Zach Randolph, and I think it's very hard to get someone to switch a style of play they've played for, a decade and a half he has evolved slowly. He shoots from 3 now and has moved outside. They have made some modifications, but not enough. And we said for a while, like, as great as the Grizzlies were, they missed their window of opportunity, because at that point where they finally got good enough, the game flipped and it became a different style of play almost overnight, and they got left behind. So they went from being a still consistently good team, they went to becoming a still consistently good team, but a team that didn't have enough to get over the hump. And that's, a great shame, because this is a team that was built up from wasn't. No one wants to be in Memphis, let's put it that way. You get drafted there. You don't go there as a free agent. I kind of like it from Memphis's point of view as well. It kind of gives them a clean break, although I'm surprised they didn't shift Conley as well. Because at 34, with his depreciating on-court play, he's got a player option this year. That's 25 mil for next year. Do you really want to be paying him 25 mil? That's a lot of money to get off your books. That's just loaded up in that one guy who, great, he's averaging 4.7 assists this year, which is a career high, but his points are down to 15.7, his rebounds are 8.6. I think it's a good move for Memphis to move on from him. And in terms of the Raptors, I think it's a great move for them, because they've just shored up their interior presence on defense. They've got another body that can bang. They don't need him all the time. He can take a much lighter workload than he had in Memphis, and he can facilitate. He just, for the Raptors, it just gives them an incredible asset, and an all-star caliber player, former all-star caliber player.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how Nick Nurse fits him in, because Gasol, we all know, is a great player. I think he's going to add a little bit of offensive juice to that team. He's going to set some really great screens for them. He directs his teammates like a point guard, and he has done ever since he's been in the league. He's one of the most vocal sort of forwards and players on the court. You can usually hear him most nights when you watch them on League Pass, but I'll be curious to see how they work their lineup now, because you bring him in, who's quite a traditional centre, albeit he has stretched the floor a lot more this season. I think he's shot 200 something threes this year, and it's like 66 overall for his career before this season. So he's clearly trying to develop that stretch five mentality, but it's probably a little bit too late for him. But the advantage that him going to there means is you can either play Serge Ibaka at the 5 and run sort of small ball and stretch the floor that way. But then when you're in the playoffs and the game slows down a little bit, you can bring in Marc Gasol, who's going to be able to get in the paint and do the dirty stuff, and matching him alongside Siakam. Like, it's really interesting. I'm not entirely sure who's going to be the backup centre here, because Serge Ibaka, we said in the last show, has been playing really well this year. Does Gasol just come in and go straight into that lineup? Surely, being the stature of a player that he is, he does.
I think he'll end up starting, but play reduced minutes, so he would be a de facto sixth man, but starts, if that makes sense. Yeah,
maybe they'll share the rotation between him and
Well, that's what Nurse has done a lot already this year. So when Valanciunas has started, it's because he has suited a particular matchup. So Nurse isn't afraid of flexing this roster as he needs to, depending on who he's facing.
Yeah, I think the playoffs are going to be interesting. I think if you come up against a team like Philadelphia, I think they're going to put Gasol in there. I think certainly with Tobias Harris in Philadelphia now, I'm not sure you can out-small them. But I think if you put Siakam and Gasol on the floor, that's going to give them... Well, it's going to give most teams headaches, because I've had this theory for a while that the next big team is going to be a team who plays big but has also got outside shooting as well. I thought maybe that would be New Orleans. That didn't quite work out with Davis and Cousins, but I think Gasol and Siakam, you put those two together, I don't know many teams in that Eastern Conference who can really go toe-to-toe with that.
Well, I think that's a good chance, a good opportunity there to jump straight over to Philly, because they brought in Tobias Harris. They've added James Ennis and Jonathan Simmons as well to give them some much needed depth. This team is Elton Brand in his first year as GM has gone and got Jimmy Butler. Job, has he? Yeah, he's taken all of Sam Hinkie's chips and just shoved them straight into the middle of the table, and he's like, let's go.
Yeah, Tobias Harris he's a great player. I tweeted yesterday that my favourite thing about Harris is how seamlessly he fits alongside other guys. I don't think there's one lineup in the league I can fit him into, because he can play the 3 and the 4. He can shoot, he can handle the ball. He can score in so many ways. I think he's a great fit because with Butler and Simmons, there have been some slight concerns over the fit. They're both ball handlers. They're both alphas. I think I'm not saying Harris is just going to stand in the corner, but I think in Brett Brown's system, that he likes to get his guys fighting through screens. I think you've got an extra weapon there. It's a great move, but I feel they gave up a lot. But again, that's with hindsight. I look at what the Bulls got Otto Porter for, and I'm wondering if there's maybe slight bit of regret in the back of certain. I mean, I've seen it on Sixers Twitter this morning that the move was kind of smacked of desperation. They gave up an awful lot, which is great for the Clippers, but I'm wondering if maybe they'd been better off going at the price that Harrison Barnes or Otto Porter were got for.
Yeah, maybe. It kind of it's not a desperation move, but it was one of the. It was an early trade. It was what, two days ago.
Yeah, it was 2 days ago. But the interesting thing about this trade deadline is that you've obviously had the ongoing Anthony Davis saga, which has kind of underpinned everything and pinned a lot of the movements around the league, because the Pelicans have clearly gone out, especially tonight, and gone out and grabbed players left, right, and centre, and grabbed picks and assets and bits and bobs to sort of make sense of their future. But like at the time when the deal was made, it made a lot of sense for both teams. But with Joe mentioning Otto Porter just now and what the Bulls got him for, a lot of that I think was probably caused by the announcement of the John Wall injury. So the Wizards were clearly trying to work out what they were going to do, how they were going to approach the rest of the season, and they've made a few moves. Morris has moved to New Orleans as well, so there's been a couple of roster changes over there to see what they can make out of the rest of the season. And the last few weeks, we've said it, like they've played pretty well when it's been Bradley Beal's team. So going out and sort of making some moves to sort of solidify their position at the moment might be a good thing, but going back to the Tobias Harris trade, like this is just another part of the Los Angeles Clippers master plan from Jerry West, who is worth all the number one picks in the world by himself at the moment. He's cleared off and managed to give the Clippers $55 million of cap this year, which is enough for them to go out and grab some people. So they're going to make some waves, because at the moment, the way the league's going, the way player power is, players are kind of dictating where they want to play. And even if you're in Los Angeles and you're on the Clippers, like that whole aura about it being the Clippers and being the bad team, you don't want to be there, it's disappeared. It's gone. It doesn't matter anymore. You're still in Los Angeles. You're in a team. There's a chance to compete. You're still going to be able to draw players in. But yeah, no, the Sixers coming away from that trade looked like they had the fiercest starting five in the Eastern Conference. But I think that's probably been matched tonight by a deal made by the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, we'll get onto that one shortly. So the Clippers and the Sixers, just to break the trade down. So the Sixers received Tobias Harris, Boban Marjanovic, because those two come as a package, Mike Scott, and sent the other way, rookie Landry Shamet, Wilson Chandler, Mike Muscala, who's now at the Lakers, a 2020 first rounder, a 2021 unprotected first round, which is from Miami, and actually probably the steal of this deal, and 2 second rounders. How important is that Miami pick, Joe?
Yeah, the Heat are in such a tough place, because I think that pick is the reason that Pat Riley's not blown it up, because they don't own it. The Heat are stuck with this. They got the highest payroll in the league, and they've not really got many players who you project getting better. I like Bam Adebayo and Justice Winslow. I don't think they're going to sort of pump you into the upper echelons of the Eastern Conference. So that absolutely is the steal of the deal. And Jerry West has done a great job. I mean, a lot of people talk about how the Knicks have cleared cap space, but the Knicks have done it because they've genuinely got barely any. In fact, have they got any good players left now that Wes Matthews has been bought out? But the Clippers have got Montrezl Harrell, they've got Danilo Gallinari, they've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they've got Garrett Temple, who they also traded to. There's some good players on this roster, and they've still got enough to go out and get one or two big dogs this summer. But what a job Jerry West has done.
Yeah, Jerry West is making a case for Executive of the Year, though I still think that's Messiah at this point. Everywhere he goes just turns to gold. That guy's the Midas touch. I think we said it a couple of weeks ago on the pod, how well he'd done it, not only on court and then as a coach and then as the GM of LA, but with Memphis as well, then Golden State as a consultant, and it's just like everywhere he goes, you just get W's. It's just nuts.
He's directly contributed to the success of the Raptors over the last half decade as well. Like certainly since we've been doing this podcast, the Raptors have been one of those teams that have always been there, and they were the first team to come across in 2009 to play a regular season game in London, back-to-back games against the Nets. And they were dire during that season, but the turnaround in less than 10 years has been pretty impressive, and Masai Ujiri's a lot to do with that. And it was interesting that all the Forbes rankings for the teams came out this week about how they were ranked, and the Raptors have grown hugely. I can't remember what the figure was up at the top of my head, but they've become one of the more profitable teams in the league, which was never the case a few years ago.
Yeah, Masai's done a great job. And while we're talking about the powers of the Eastern Conference, we've referenced this Tobias Harris trade. You've got the starting five now. It'll probably be Simmons, Redick, Harris, Butler, and Embiid. Do you guys think that makes them the favourites in the Eastern Conference? I've personally still got Milwaukee because I genuinely think they're undefendable. I don't see how you stop that Giannis-Lopez combo. But do either of you have Philly now as the number one? Not necessarily the number one seed, but the team who's going to make the finals?
It's a tough one because I want to... Oh, this is really sitting on the fence. I'm an habitual fence sitter. I want to see them, how they get on the court together. On paper, star power alone, this should be it. They've got four guys who are like 6'7", 6'9", 6'9", 7 foot. Like they've got length and height and the ability to go inside and outside. Barring Ben Simmons, and then you've got JJ Redick, who is just your lights out shooter from anywhere on the left side of the hoop. It's just they have on paper perhaps the most talented 1 through 5 in the East,
and they've got 2 Simmons now. So, that's double trouble.
Well, and don't forget, Jonathan Simmons was, came from the Spurs system. And
he can play.
Exactly. What he did with San Antonio, we haven't seen it as much because Orlando they're Orlando. Sorry, Orlando Magic UK fans. They're not exactly head turners.
He's kind of been asked to, like, when you're on the Spurs, you're a team player. When he went to the Magic, they signed him to be one of the guys, and he just could not handle... Wes Matthews had the same problem in Dallas. They couldn't handle that workload. But in the role that the Sixers are going to use him in, I think he's definitely going to be better than Wilson Chandler was.
Yeah, no, I can't argue with that. Where do you want to go to next then? Because we've talked about Philly for long enough now. In fact, did we arrive at a decision? Did we say where we got these? I wanted to see them first, but on paper they are favourites for me.
They got rid of Markel Fultz as well.
Yeah.
I feel like... Well, I know he's kind of slipped... Well, he has slipped off the rail completely, but I feel like... I think it's still worth more chatter than it's getting. I mean, again, I'm a well-documented Steve Clifford fan, probably a bigger fan than his wife and kids, but I think... I think one of the things he does really well is offensively gets his guys into positions. Brett Brown's a very good coach, but I think they were kind of in win now. So Brett Brown went, well, Markel, you're playing in my system. I think Steve Clifford, they haven't got a lot to lose, Orlando. So I kind of love this matchup for Markel Fultz. And I'm going to go as far as saying if Steve Clifford cannot fix him, I don't know who can, because Clifford is going to get him. He's going to build the offense around him. The guard play this year, DJ Augustin's had a solid year, but Markel Fultz is more talented. I think he's going to go in there, and we may see a mini revival from him.
Danny Ainge is laughing right now, because the return on this, considering that the Celtics swapped that pick and picked up Jason Tatum, the return is Jonathan Simmons and two picks, one of which was the Thunder's pick, and I believe that's top 20 protected. So that could cause them some problems at some point, but that relies on the Thunder. It's remarkable the difference in seasons or performances for the guys that those two teams ended up picking, because they were both going for it at the time, and Fultz has ended up on the bad end. But it's a saga that's going to be talked about forever, because he's constantly in that blazer. Like, the amount of people who've been taking the piss out of him for wearing that blazer, I don't think he ever takes it off, but Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, the Sixers have done a remarkable job. I was surprised that Jimmy Butler wasn't moved because it generally seemed like he was going to be a problem. But since he's joined them, they have looked like a contender, and on several occasions since that move, they've looked like the best team in the Eastern Conference. Joel Embiid is a freak right now. You watch him every night; it's just a marvel what he does. He's got the ultimate inside-out game at the moment. He's one of the best players to watch. He could, in touch wood, he stays healthy. He could end up being one of the best players of all time. Jonathan Simmons, the guy they got back from Orlando for this deal, he's going to provide them some solid wing depth off the bench, which is a team that has desperately needed that, certainly since they made the trade to acquire Jimmy Butler in the first place. So Elton Brand and the Sixers have done a pretty good job considering the sort of state and the whirlwind roller coaster ride that the Sixers organisation have had, starting with all the Jerry Colangelo stuff in the summer and ending with all this Jimmy Butler fallout recently. So, if they've put themselves in a really good situation, and that's the thing we've seen tonight has been all of these teams at the top of the Eastern Conference. Now LeBron has gone. All of a sudden, everyone thinks this is wide open. You've got a rift in Boston, which we were going to talk about the other night, but we actually didn't touch on at all. With Kyrie Irving coming out, and he's not sure about his future, and they're having some issues fitting guys like Gordon Hayward back in the lineup. Al Horford's been out and missed time, so that's affected them a lot. And then you've got the Pacers, who had a devastating injury to Victor Oladipo, which has kind of ruined them a little bit. But you've still got Toronto, Milwaukee, Philly, who are all sitting there thinking, well, hang on a minute, all it takes is we've just got to get to the playoffs, and then it's 16 games we have to win. It's great to be talking about the Eastern Conference in a positive aspect for once, because we have slandered it a lot over the last few years on this podcast.
Yeah, myself included, very much so. So let's stay east for a minute then. So the Bucks also made moves. Thon Maker went to Detroit for Stanley Johnson. Stanley Johnson was a Buck for 24 hours before he was included with Jason
There's been a lot of that going on this week.
In a trade to the Pelicans for Nikola Mirotić. What do you make of this move? Did the Bucks need to make a move? Are you pleased with this move?
They didn't need to make a move, but my God, they went out and made the right move. They were linked to Anthony Davis, which I think shows the respect that they've garnered this season. They were never going to get him, or never going to make the move to get him. I think it meant sacrificing too much of their team. As we said on the last podcast, you didn't want to give up Eric Bledsoe and some of those key core guys to go out and attain him. But the Bucks are ridiculous this season. I wrote the season preview for them in our guide, and we said that they were going to stretch the floor and that Mike Budenholzer was going to come in and implement that Spursian type offense, and they were going to play smart, sensible basketball. He had them in the gym all summer shooting 3-pointers, and it's paid off. I mean, they've made the second most amount of threes in the league this season, and they're shooting them at a phenomenally high clip every game. You go out and you add Mirotić, who's averaging 16.7 games, 8.3 rebounds this season. He's having career highs most nights. He was a guy who was a catalyst for the Pelicans last year. Like when they made the move to grab him from the Bulls at this time last year, and he helped them power their way into the Western Conference playoff rankings, and then they demolished your Blazers. I'm saying your Blazers because we like to do that. Your Blazers in the first round of the playoffs last year, and he had 30 points in one of those games and shot 12 or 14 from the field, I seem to remember. He is a player who can spark it off, and now you've got him combined with Brook Lopez and Giannis. Like, that front court is ridiculous because you can play 4 out and 1 in all the time, Giannis being the 1 in, but in theory you could play 5 out because Giannis seems to be shooting threes as well now. Not at a high rate, I'll give him that.
I was going to say.
But he's still someone you have to look at. If he ever develops that, then this team is going to be, 3-point ridiculous. But they're an interesting contrast to the Golden State Warriors, who went about building their 3-point space the floor team around guards and large forwards. But now you've got because Brook Lopez doesn't look like he should be stretching the floor at all, and Nikola Mirotić doesn't either, but they're both incredibly good at it, but they both have an inside game as well. So I think the Bucks are laughing. This is all about getting enough space for Giannis Antetokounmpo to work inside, and yeah, they've hit the nail. If I had to give it a grade, I'd give it as many A stars as I could. It's a phenomenal trade.
Yeah, Mirotić, I mean, I had this theory, probably went a bit over the top. I think he's one of the biggest, most important trade deadline additions. This was when he was at New Orleans. I stand by that. I think he dragged them into the playoffs, personally. I know Davis was great, but Davis has been great before and they've not made the playoffs. I think he was the difference. Constant floor spacing, and I think they're going to do that now. One of the underrated storylines of the Bucks season is that by positional estimate, Giannis has played 25% of his minutes at centre. I think Mike Budenholzer is going to have one of Lopez or Mirotić on the floor at all times. Lopez Giannis combo has just killed teams. They've not quite had the same from their bench bigs, but I mean, you get Mirotić in there as well. That's 48 minutes in theory if he staggers the minutes, which Budenholzer will. I think he's pretty smart. If he staggers those minutes, I don't see how you're stopping this offense. I really don't. How do you defend it? Because Lopez pulls your centre out and then you've got no one big enough to defend Giannis. I think that's maybe where a team like Toronto may have an advantage, because they do have the size to maybe be able to go inside. That's kind of what I was getting at earlier.
And on some nights, it hasn't even mattered if you've got a big to defend Giannis, because Giannis has been shooting over double teams this year.
No, that's the thing. Like, there is no. It's like the LeBron stopper. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as a Giannis stopper either. But you've got, I think, with Lopez and Mirotić now, you kind of have to. You're gonna have to go big, and you know there's a math problem when you do that if you've not got the bigs who can shoot the three. So. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Mirotić fan, so I'm a little bit biased, but I just think this is such a good move.
Well, you said earlier about you think the future is going to be big guys who can spread the floor. You know, obviously Eric Bledsoe's starting and he's 6'1", but if you look at their lineup, you've got 6'8" Chris Middleton, you've got 6'11" Giannis, you've got Brook Lopez at 7 foot, and now you've got 6'10" Mirotić. Like, you could quite easily see as well the way they spread the floor, them having, instead of Bledsoe sits for a bit, and someone like Ilyasova, who admittedly is not washed, but he's a 10-year vet who's not what he was, and when he was great, he wasn't amazing, but he's a guy who can spread the floor, get hot, streaky shooters. You could have 5 on the court where the smallest guy is 6'8", and 4 of them can light it up from outside. It's almost like an anti-Warriors.
Yeah, and their advantage for me over the other teams is I think they've comfortably got the best coach in the Eastern Conference. Do you know, he may be this year. I think right now I don't think there's many better coaches in the league than Mike Budenholzer. So I think the job he's done. I know he inherited a good roster, but he's just they were okay under Jason Kidd. I think he gets over criticised, but they weren't a sound offensive team under him. It was just very much, Giannis, go and do your thing, but they're so structured now, and I think the shooting bigs are part of that, because their offense, I mean, you guys have seen that breakdown of everyone's shot volume on the Bucks. Basically, if you guys haven't seen it, check it out, but every player is in the paint, apart from Brook Lopez, who is, I think it wasn't a corner 3, but it was a 3.
So the way out elbow extended angle on the left side of the floor.
Yeah, so that's
very precise.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and that's Mike Budenholzer for you, and they've done a great job. When John Hammond left for Orlando a couple of years ago, a couple of people were a bit shaky about it, but they've been brilliant.
Quick question, Joe: who's your favourite coach? Because you are obviously waxing lyrical here on Bud, but you did say earlier that you're a bigger fan of Steve Clifford than his wife and kids. So
and you hate Nick Nurse. You got that from Slack.
You have to pick one. Who is it? Is it Bud or Clifford?
It's Bud. Bud's got, Clifford doesn't have the record. Not that's his fault, but Bud's the best in the business.
You're sending Bud Valentine's flowers. You heard it here first, people.
Excellent. Okay, so the East is pretty loaded now up top. There is just I don't know. It just seems like they've just pushed things to the next level. Are we right to be excited about the East again, or is this all just it doesn't matter because the Eastern Conference title means jack when you get whooped in the finals? Do you think any of these teams can actually go ahead and take the Warriors down?
I don't think they could take them down, but I would back the Sixers and the Bucks to cause them a hell of a lot of problems. I know the Warriors' offense is just ridiculous, but I think the matchup problems these two give you are just, they're problems. You know, I think they can go in against any of them personally.
It's Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo are the unknown factors when it comes to a game on that stage. Like in the finals, what can they can they become? Because they could really just turn it on to a whole nother level, like if they stay healthy. Durant was quite vocal recently about when he beat LeBron last year, it was last year. He thought he'd be well known and well received as being the best player in the league, but it's not going to be that simple, mate. Giannis and Joel Embiid are certainly coming for that crown once LeBron recedes it. But the East is great fun this year, and you've got guys who are rejuvenating their careers. Like we just spoke about Eric Bledsoe. He's got a career high 19.6 PER this season, which is higher than he's ever had throughout his career. He's rejuvenated himself completely because it was on the Clippers, and then he was in the Suns, and then he was somewhere else, Toronto, I think. No, not Toronto. He's
bounced around.
Yeah, he's bounced around. He's been on several teams, but to get what they've got out of him this year, and defensively he's been unbelievable. Like we've said before, that Mike Budenholzer said there's one guy on that team he trusts to make a stop these days, and it's Eric Bledsoe, which he'd never have thought going back 4 or 5 years. So it's remarkable to see how the Eastern Conference is thriving. There's just a bit of a problem at the moment where you've got like really good teams at the top, and then the bottom is just trash. So they need to sort that out. You can't have guys like John Collins being the only highlight reel for the Atlanta Hawks, for example.
Well, let's be fair. There's also Phoenix in the West, so it's not an exclusive
one
East
team
thing where there's trash.
and now Memphis. Are pretty bad.
So okay, let's. This is what gets me is either LeBron is even better than we give him credit for, or I can't get my head around. Why didn't these teams try and pull similar moves last year to take? Because it feels to me that these three iterations of the Bucks, the 76ers, and the Raptors should have been able to dethrone that carcass of a Cavs team that he dragged to the finals last year. I don't understand why they've gone, now he's gone, let's go, versus we can take this guy because look what we've got. And maybe it's just a timing thing, but to me, I'm sat there going, the East could have been better last year. The finals could have been better last year, and it wasn't.
It's timing for the Bucks, definitely. The Raptors obviously just choked, as they always do. DeMar DeRozan was unplayable. I think the Sixers maybe could have been a bit more aggressive. You got to remember they're
a young team, man.
But I think you see it more in the NFL where teams really go for it when their best players are on rookie contracts. The Sixers are going for it now. Well, they've still got Simmons on his, but maybe could have done it a year earlier.
Okay, so let's move on to Harrison Barnes and that moment. So, in case you didn't know, wow, this is unbelievable. Harrison Barnes traded halfway through a game. What did you guys make of that?
Do you know the response? Basketball's a business.
I've disagreed with a lot of Mavericks Twitter about Harrison Barnes. To be honest, they've actually come around in the last month or so. I don't think he's a great player, but he did a lot for the community. Like they had the Dallas shootings a couple of years ago, and before he'd even signed his contract, he was out, helping the community. But when I saw this, I saw red. I got a bit annoyed. I'm like, well, you can't trade a guy halfway through a game. But the understanding of it with a couple of Mavericks beat writers is that he knew he was likely going to be traded before the game. Rick Carlisle asked him if he wanted to be benched, and Barnes said no. So I think, basically, that I don't think it... I know it looks bad, but I don't think it was that bad.
I don't think it's bad at all. Like I don't see what the hoo-ha is. Like the minute you're going to lose a window of opportunity if you're not if you're not open to conversations whilst the game's going on. Because if you're not there, someone else will be there. That trade might have disappeared for whatever reason, and then maybe they should have benched him to start with. But the minute the trade goes through, you're not paying for his insurance anymore. Get him off the floor. It's just interesting one for me. I just like the outrages, particularly LeBron went off on it, I believe.
I was going to say the league is very salty at the moment. There's a lot of people going back and forth at player power versus team power and what is right and what is wrong, and the old guys and chipping off on TNT saying that it would never been like that in their days. But the game has changed. Things move on. Money is considerably more than it ever was back when they were all playing. And LeBron just goes and says people should stay off social media while all the trade deadline stuff's happening, and then what does he do? Go on social media.
LeBron is a law unto himself.
The way I see it, Barnes wasn't upset, so I don't think anyone else should be. That's my take on life, basically. You can't be offended on behalf of other people.
He's a great get for the Sacramento Kings as well. The way they've been playing this season, the young guys on that team, he's going to go over there, going to mentor guys like De'Aaron Fox. I think it's a good get for him. I still think he's got a lot left in his tank. He's played pretty well for the Mavericks this season. He has those games every now and then where he goes off and scores like 27, 30 points. So they're still going to get something out of him.
The issue he's had is shot selection. I don't think he's going to have that problem in Sacramento because I think they've got multiple playmakers. Even a guy like Nemanja Bjelica can make plays for a 6'10" power forward. So you imagine the starting lineup now. They'll slot him in at small forward where Shumpert, I think, was starting. So it'll be Fox, Hield, Barnes, Bjelica, Cauley Stein. That's a pretty good starting five. And with the Clippers are currently in 8 at the moment. Sacramento are at 9. I mean, I've been back in Sacramento for a while now, for the last couple of months, to get into the playoffs. And I've got to be honest, with this move, I fancy them to really snag that 8 seed. They're probably up against the Lakers. I think they're more together than the Lakers are. And the Lakers have literally just decided... The Lakers have shot half their roster and they've pretty much leaked that. So, and I don't know how great Sacramento can be. I think there's a ceiling, but you've got to remember, this team has had a miserable decade since Rick Adelman got fired. I think their fans are going to be happy just seeing a good team out there. Not necessarily a great one, but a good one.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The Sacramento fans are, you hear that all the time, but they are some of the best fans in the league. And to stay with that franchise through the absolute storm, I'm removing the expletive there, that they've been for the last decade it's just awesome. It's good to see them getting some wins.
They've got a fantastic facility as well. Like all the money that was pumped into them to keep them there has certainly helped. And having a good basketball team that's winning and getting into the playoffs and has some really fun players. De'Aaron Fox is taking over the mantle of fastest player in the league, in my opinion. Marvin Bagley's been playing really well. He got a lot of stick this summer because he was obviously picked and wasn't Luka Doncic. But it is what it is. He's probably going to be a really solid player throughout his career. There's not many guys in the league who are going to be Luka. To be fair, Luka is Luka. He's his own thing. So to get what they've got out of get out of Marvin Bagley this year has been pretty impressive.
Did you see that 360 dunk on the alley-oop?
Yes.
Oh.
Bagley, I'm not sure. I think the problem he's going to have is he's never going to... I don't think he's going to be as good as the 3 guys taken around him. Obviously, you can't say Ayton because Sacramento don't have a chance.
I was going to say, you think Ayton's going to be...
I think Ayton will be better than Bagley. But, I mean, I think Jaren Jackson is quite a way ahead of Bagley. But, he's still a good player. But I think when you're in that draft class, I think they could have done better. But... I think I like the Barnes pickup. I don't think he'll need to take bad shots on that team. And Buddy Hield, I think he's the most we've talked about underrated players for years now. It's always been Kemba Walker and Mike Conley. Kemba's not underrated anymore. I think Buddy Hield is quickly going to take that title away. Saw a tweet yesterday. I can't remember the exact details, but the gist of it was players averaging 20 points a game and shooting 40% from 3, and there's only 5 of them, and it's it's people like Paul George, Steph Curry, and there's Buddy Hield. He's absolutely brilliant. They've got a good starting 5, good coach, a lot of young players for depth. Great move. Not something we've said very often about this team.
No, he had a hard time when he came into the league because they immediately compared him to Steph Curry, which was never going to help. And everyone remembers that Game of Zones episode where
he was in the background. It was Vivek Rondadive. That was it. No one else. Yeah. But notice how he's no longer in the press.
But that broke out.
Yeah.
I think Vlade probably had some words because they seem to have sort of steadied the ship in the last few years. Yeah, they've done the opposite from what the Pelicans and the Lakers have been doing this week, which is spaffing at each other publicly.
Yeah, we won't get into that one. Did you guys want to go over anything else?
The Wizards are a bit screwed. Don't even want to go into it. Just wanted to say they traded. So they got, what did they get for names? Jabari Parker, who's Shanghai Sharks, probably the next big signing.
Well, they're clearing cap space. We mentioned it on Monday how they were going to be hamstrung by this wall injury where he's ruptured his Achilles. We've done 2 pods in, what day are we today? Thursday? 3 days? we've done 2 very recently. I can't remember them; they all blur to one. But the Jabari deal, he's got it was 2 years, 40 million. He signed with the Bulls, but the second year is a team option. There's no way that the Wizards are picking that up. He says, and then they go and do it for some reason. But they've managed to get. It's a huge salary dump for them, in my opinion. He's not there to contribute.
No, but I mean, Porter's a good player. You know, I get why they're doing it, but surely there was. I mean, this is what all the Wizards beat writers said. Surely there was something better than Jabari Parker.
You'd hope, and if there wasn't, then why would you look at trading him anyway?
Yeah, I don't see the point.
It's just solely salary dump from my perspective.
And with Beal as well, they've said he's not for trade. I've got a bit of a theory on that, but it's me overestimating Ernie Grunfeld. I think there's going to be a scramble for big free agents this summer, and I'm wondering if the Wizards are, because Porter's a good player, he's not a great player, Beal is a great player, so I'm wondering if maybe the Wizards are hoping someone will be really desperate in the summer after striking out on free agents. Maybe the Lakers, a team like that. Basically, you know, the scramble for Leonard, Durant, Irving, maybe someone will be really desperate and they'll give up a lot for Bradley Beal. But then again, this is Ernie Grunfeld, so we never know.
Well, like Death and Taxes, he'll still be GM next year. Cool. Anything else?
No, I just think it's been hilarious that this whole week has been, or 2 weeks has been dominated by Anthony Davis, and then it just all fell on its face in the last few days. It has kept ESPN and Fox Sports and all of those channels in the States going like 24/7 the last few weeks, and then they kind of had nothing to talk about for a few hours at some point yesterday, and it was a bit strange. But yeah, that whole thing is just there's going to be stories about how that all came out over the next few weeks, I think, with, you know,
so
either Lakers leaking trades or Pelicans leaking trades, or people organising to stop the Lakers from getting what they want, or people sticking their fingers up at Rich Paul and LeBron James. Like, there's so many angles that you can look at it. It's been fascinating, but it's why we love the NBA. Like, there's nothing like it when it comes to the sort of player movement and the individuals and getting, you know, out there and talking on social media and stuff, because it's one thing you don't see in like the Premier League. You don't see players going on Twitter and going on about moving teams, and Durant setting up burner accounts and having to go at people. Like, it's a truly unique social league, and it's just been absolutely bonkers trying to keep track of everything the last few days.
Yeah, and Davis actually said that he wants to play. If he wasn't moved, he wanted to play.
But they won't let him, so
there's no way. With his injury history, I'm not letting you touch the court in case you damage the return I can get for you.
Well, so I thought they'd wait out and take the Celtics offer, and it looks like that's probably going to be the case. And then the Lakers will be the ones running around looking for Bradley Beal, like Joe just said. So we shall see, because, you know, Leonard could end up with the Clippers, and so could a few others. So we'll see.
It's going to be a fun summer. Thanks everyone for listening. Make sure you're following us on all social media platforms at Double Clutch UK. Make sure you subscribe and rate this podcast, because we love the comments and it helps us get more traffic. Just before we go, we ought to just pour one out to Nick Stauskas and Wade Baldwin, who have had quite a hectic week. On February the 3rd, they were traded by the Blazers to the Cavs. On February the 6th, they were then sent to the Rockets. On February the 7th, which is today for all you smart people, although you'll be listening to it tomorrow, so it won't be, they were sent to the Pacers. 8 minutes later, they were waived.
Yeah,
so
fun times.
Casualties of this, quite frankly, awesome trade deadline, but we'll take a moment to respect you guys. But thank you very much for listening. We'll catch you next time. See ya.
Thank you.